don't take client data and put it into public version of ChatGPT because it could be leaked. On the one hand, clients expect us to be on top of the latest technology, and we are. I mean, we're investing millions of dollars. A year ago, people were talking about, oh, we need to be training everybody in prompt engineering. But as time has gone on, we've seen, no, we quite don't, because the Gen AI is learning how to do the prompt engineering for us. My hottest take in the industry is, despite the fact that everybody's talking about AI, and I still think...
Welcome to Between the Briefs, a podcast by Steno. We're here to bring you practical tips, expert insights, and real conversations about the pretrial process, court reporting, and the legal technology shaping the future of litigation. I'm your host, Adrian.
And I'm your host, Joe Stevens. Whether you're an attorney, paralegal, or just curious about how technology is changing the legal industry, we've got something for you. Each episode will break down complex topics, share behind-the-scenes intel, and talk to the people leading innovation in and out of the courtroom. So grab a coffee and let's get into what's happening between the briefs.
Hello and welcome to Between the Briefs, brought to you by Steno. We're your hosts. My name is Adrian.
And I'm your co-host, Joe Stevens.
In this episode, we're thrilled to welcome Dave Cohen, Senior Counsel at Reed Smith LLP, and an expert in the world of e-discovery. With over 40 years of experience in litigation, Dave has been a leader in integrating technology into legal practices, particularly in e-discovery, and has had a significant influence in shaping the industry.
Dave has been recognized as one of the top practitioners in e-discovery and has served in numerous leadership roles, including chairing the EDRM Board of Trustees. His career has spanned various areas of law, including financial services litigation, mass tort, and government investigations.
Dave, welcome to the show. It's great to have you with us here today. How are you doing?
Great today, and thank you, Joe and Adrian. It's an honor to be on, and thanks for all the nice things that you just said about me.
No problem. We're very happy to have you on and be a guest here. So I want to take our audience right to the beginning. Tell us, what is it that got you into the career of law? And, how has your career really evolved over the years?
Yes, well, my father was a lawyer, and he was a trial lawyer. He prided himself on getting into court and litigating. And back then, I'm going to date myself, but I would watch on TV shows like Perry Mason, where, he would be defending innocent murder defendants, and saw myself standing up in the courtroom and doing those things. So really, from a young age, I wanted to go to law school, and once I got into law school, I envisioned myself coming out and spending all my time in court. But as we know, in real life, most of litigation is not in court. Most of it is in preparing. And a lot of the big jobs, including the offers I got coming out of law school, are for big firms where you're representing big companies, and cases can take years to get to trial, and what something like 99% of them settle before trial. So the careers ended up being a little bit different, but I have gone into court and done a number of trials, both bench trials and jury trials, and that has been fun and has been a real highlight for me.
Dave, has it always been on the civil side? Have you ever done any criminal work?
Yeah, again, probably because of my childhood experience, I always envisioned myself standing up for the criminal defendant. So at law school, I joined the club Harvard Defenders, which provided legal defense to indigent defendants. And under the Massachusetts rules, you're actually allowed to represent individuals as a law student, certain kinds of cases as a second year, and other cases as a third year. So I actually handled a couple of cases then. And then during my summers, I split a summer after my second year and spent some time working for the DA in Manhattan. And so I got to see the other side of the fence, being a prosecutor. So that was the extent of my, shall we say, common person criminal defense. When I started at my first law firm, which was K&L Gates, I was interested in criminal, and so I expressed that interest, and they had some white-collar criminal matters. And I did find that nearly as satisfying. Usually government investigations were very document heavy. In some cases, you didn't know much about what the charges were all about. I found it difficult, and I didn't really enjoy it as much as some of the other litigation work that I was doing. So other than that white collar criminal work, and then certainly on the e-discovery side, we've been involved in a number of government investigations with, quasi-criminal implications, potential criminal liability in some circumstances. But my focus there has been mostly on the e-discovery piece, more recently, as opposed to being the first chair, second chair, litigation counsel. I should mention I was also appointed to serve as a special e-discovery master in a criminal case, and that was interesting. And from what I understand, that's one of the only cases, certainly in the Western District of Pennsylvania, where they had a e-discovery special master in a criminal case, and I found that to be very interesting as well.
Oh, well, that is fascinating. And you mentioned these cases have being very document heavy. In these situations where you're just filled with
Oh,
tons of documents and you got to find the answer hidden under these stacks of paper, how do you go about being efficient and finding the information that you need?
It's certainly gotten easier over the years with the advent of the computers. So, and that's actually how I got into e-discovery early on, going back to the 80s when I started my legal career and I got assigned to some big cases. We didn't have personal computers back then. And I got put on as a young associate. I got put on some cases where, as you know, the tough document review work usually falls down to the lowest person on the totem pole, which happened to be me. And early on, I got onto some very large scale cases with a lot of documents, no personal computers yet, but we actually hired a consultant in one of my original cases. We hired Price Waterhouse to help us figure out how to handle millions of documents and get prepared for depositions and so on. And so back then, we would manually code the documents or have them coded. We'd actually hire people to type in what we called bibliographic information. So the dates, who the documents to and from, and what the reline is, so that we could at least search them for depositions and then look at them. Of course, we had physical photocopies back then, and so we would make two sets. We would have the archive set of documents and then the working set, and it would be the job of paralegals to pull documents out of the archive set and make copies for the so that we never lost any documents. The reason we had two sets was because, documents get pulled and refiled. You don't want to lose them. So actually, they would make copies for the depot prep. And then, of course, as a young associate, I'd have to look through, but at least we knew the documents were to and from the right people during the right time frame, and we had the relines. All of this, even just putting that little information into a database, required a mainframe computer. So I remember working with some of the really old software, a program called Basis, which was based on the old IBM Stairs and these systems that libraries used, really the very first databases for information collection and retrieval. And it was a huge advance when I think it was the late 80s or the early 90s. A new software package came out, BRS, Bibliographic Retrieval Service, again from the library industry. And we started building computers that were big enough that at least you didn't have to go to a mainframe computer. We still didn't have laptops or PCs, but we could put the documents on a computer that you could actually house at your law firm. So that was one of the big first advances in computerizing. So we were using computers in the late 80s and 90s, even though that was before email and that was before electronic documents. But we would code in information with physical coders, and we would started sending documents to the Philippines and to India to get the bibliographic coding done at low cost.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's wild. Dave, I'm always so interested to talk to practitioners like yourself. I'm also a practicing attorney, but the depth of your career obviously goes back through sort of multiple waves of different tech revolutions. And obviously we're sort of in the middle of another one here, maybe one of the more massive ones with AI, which I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit. But before we get into that, can you just sort of set the table? I mean, over your career, you have seen tech disrupt and affect the legal practice in so many different ways. And I'm wondering if you could sort of assess that. I mean, where has it been really positive from a productivity point of view? What you just talked about, the tech jumping in and being useful is obviously a big time saver. Where has it been positive, but where also sort of like the shadow side of that? Where has it been something that you haven't seen as much of a net positive?
I think in the long run, it has all been net positive. There's always disruptions. There's always short-term winners and losers. And so that's really important to stay ahead of it. But, I mentioned the move from, mainframe computers to P- computers that you could have at your law firm. And now, of course, to PCs and now the little telephones that we hold in our hands, which have hundreds of times more computing power, if not thousands, than the old mainframe computers. So it's incredible. But the where the information is stored, a similar huge change. So we started with paper and all these paper sets, and then it was a big move when we moved to microfilming documents because what we could do is we could microfilm them faster than we could photocopy them. And so we microfilmed them, and then we could work with the images and print out the copies that we needed, and it was cheaper, and it seemed like tremendous technology to be able to microfilm. Of course, 10 years later, the microfilming, there was a long microfilm period, but then ultimately it gave way to imaging. But still, you were using paper copies and creating images and then getting OCR of the images, but you could at least now search full text and not just the indexed information. Then, of course, we had the dawn of electronic communication and email. And so now everything starts in electronic form, or almost everything, and you don't have to do the imaging. So with each of those steps, there's disruption. There are companies that, were much bigger, Xerox and Kodak and everything. And those that anticipated and were able to move smoothly into that next wave of technology survived. But if you look at the turnover and the companies that we were dealing with back then that were lit support companies, and there were far fewer of them, most of them don't exist anymore, were gobbled up by other companies, and then new companies have emerged. But the key to success has been anticipating what's the next wave of technology and being ahead of that wave. So yeah, I'm not going to say that there haven't been losers. There are. If you work for one of those companies, you had to move or see your company sold 2 or 3 times. And there's always bumps along the way with every new technology. There are initial problems, things that don't work perfectly, things that you have to watch out for. Seeing the same thing with AI now and hallucinations. But these improvements of technology as a whole tend to speed things up, reduce costs, and that's an important thing because the other thing that technology has done is there's just been a tremendous proliferation of information. So used to be when people had to sit down at a typewriter to write a letter, we wrote down a lot less and we relied on phone calls and personal meetings a lot more. And then email came along, and those telephone conversations, many of them turned into emails because you didn't have to worry if the person was available to talk by phone. You didn't have to interrupt what they were doing. You had an automatic record of the communication and something to help remember it. A lot of good things about it. But all of a sudden, the amount of information that was in writing multiplied, and then that became exponential. And then we moved not just from email, but to texts, and now these collaboration programs like Teams and Slack, and now, of course, all the social media. And so there was so much more information now in the average case or for the average witness than there used to be, that if it wasn't for this technology to manage it, we would be completely lost.
Definitely. And you've mentioned a very wild timeline for how things have just developed over the years. Companies come and go. I'm very curious, how have you seen AI now disrupt the space, particularly in e-discovery?
Yes. So, e-discovery was one of the first areas to adopt AI, but I call it the old AI in the form of predictive coding. And predictive coding has now been around for almost 20 years. And it was one of the real first productive uses of artificial intelligence, not just in the legal industry, but in many professional industries. I don't think there was a lot of AI. Obviously, the medical field and radiology in some areas, it's been around for a while, and it worked very well, and it still works very well for identifying relevant documents. Obviously, not perfectly, but some studies have shown better than human attorneys reviewing. Now, when we talk about AI, we're almost always talking about the new AI, generative AI. And that is just incredible. I think this is going to be different, bigger than, and more disruptive than anything we've seen today, up until now, in terms of the speed of advancement and in terms of what it can do. And so it's more important than ever that lawyers and other professionals and everyone in society really that has a job be on top of this, because jobs are going to change and they're going to become AI enhanced, AI enabled, and in some cases, AI replaced. And so it's really important to be on top of this. This is going to be the biggest disruptor ever. We've already seen tremendous strides, but remember this thing is an infant. What was it? ChatGPT was released in November of 23, was it? So we're only a couple years in. Yet look at the strides we've seen so far. Look at all the new companies that have launched. All of the companies that were in legal technology have added AI, or at least claim to have added AI, because you have to get anybody to talk to you anymore. So it is, but I've seen more of a proliferation of new companies that didn't have previous experience in the legal industry because of what AI can accomplish. We're seeing a lot of that, and new companies are entering the market every month.
Dave, there's
There's
obviously a
obviously
tremendous amount of
tremendous
excitement
excitement.
around AI. What about do you have any hesitation? Do you have any fear? Do you have any sort of apprehension around what it could do?
Well, there's lots of things to worry about, and that's lawyers are trained to identify them and worry about them. So on a large scale, there are some AI experts who have existential concerns. Or is AI going to knock out the human race? Little minor issues like that. Some of my favorite futurists are a little bit more optimistic. I just finished reading Ray Kurzweil's latest book, The Singularity is Near. And he points out, and especially in his last chapter, all the things that can go wrong and all the bad things. But I think he concludes that maybe there's only about a 30% chance that we're going to extinguish the human race. It still seems high to me. He has a generally optimistic view of it. Some of the other people that I like to read, like Harari, are a little bit more negative on the prospects. Now I'm in middle reading Nexus. You've all know Harari's latest book, and that does not have as happy a picture. So yeah, in terms of focusing a little bit more on what you're probably getting after, which is legal concerns, you certainly have things that you have to worry about. The biggest one, or a couple of the biggest ones, are, first of all, confidentiality of client data. Don't take client data and put it into public version of ChatGPT, because you will not, it could be leaked. It's not protected. You've got to be very careful with how you use these new systems in terms of protecting the confidentiality of your client data, which we are, as lawyers, are all ethically required to do, and as other legal professionals who work with lawyers. And so that's probably concern number one. And concern number two is understanding that generative AI hallucinates, which is to say it makes things up, or to be less kind, it lies. And it can do so very convincingly. And a lot of lawyers have already gotten into trouble for that by, for example, filing briefs that cite cases that were given to it by Gen AI products and turn out to be wholly made up sites. And so we've seen a number of lawyers get sanctioned for that, starting with a MATA case a couple years ago. You would think that the word would get out and people would stop doing that, but it keeps happening. And every month or so, I see another headline of another lawyer that filed something without checking a case site. So very important for anybody using it to understand that you are responsible for the work product, and you can't trust it even when it sounds convincing, and you need to double check everything and make sure it's up to professional standards. The rate of hallucination is going to go down as the technology improves, and as we have new augmented technology, like retrieval augmented generation, is starting to be introduced into a lot of products, but it's still going to be there. And ultimately, we're still responsible for making sure the quality is there. So those are two of the concerns specific to legal. Another concern is what's this going to do in terms of training new lawyers? a lot of us learned by we hated doing it, but doing those document reviews or doing those deposition summaries or doing that research memo from draft. None of those things should ever be done again purely by a human because of inefficiency. I may be exaggerating just a little bit, but really, you can spit out a depo summary with AI that's everybody bit as good, certainly better than the ones I used to do as a young associate. It can help you at least as a research starter. And so if we have AI doing more and more of this, and it is going to get better and better because it's a growing up infant, then how are we going to make sure that new attorneys who, at this point, a lot of the stuff that AI does best is the stuff that's done at the lower levels by attorneys. How are they going to get their training? And we've had similar concerns in the past. I mean, when we went from the old-fashioned research to Lexis and Westlaw getting better, obviously we didn't need the younger lawyers to be as skilled, and they learned to get really good at using Westlaw and Lexis and Bloomberg. And so I'm hoping the same kind of thing happens, that this just creates new skill sets for young lawyers to develop, and those become the more important skill sets going forward. In the long run, though, we don't just have to worry about the young lawyers. The AI is going to get better and better and do more and more of what more senior lawyers do. And so we're all going to have to be prepared to adapt and learn how to leverage the Gen AI the best ways possible, but still check to make sure that it's accurate and that your clients are getting the best possible representation.
So I want to stay on this for a second, Dave, because I also teach at a law school here in West Texas, and the future of development of attorneys is something that really is interesting to me. And I don't know. I mean, I'm also a big reader. You've mentioned the books that you're reading on this. Sometimes I wonder, sometimes I just wonder if this is a generational thing, right? Like I think of the way that my dad laments some of the ways that my generation was trained, or he was a journalist, so his idea of what it means to actually write something or put a sentence together, it didn't have the same level of importance for later generations, and yet things just move on. We kind of keep figuring it out, and I wonder. I agree with you. The skill sets, like the tech fluency of this generation of graduating law students is incredible. But then in its place, as you said, the softer skills, whether it's actually doing some of the grunt work that you and I used to do a little bit more, or standing on your feet and being an advocate, like figuring out how these different skills need to be trained as well, I think is a real challenge. Do you see that at your firm as well? Or when you're engaging with younger practitioners, do you see their brilliance in areas that you didn't have that early in your career? And flip side is also true, where you look at their skill set and you're like, well, this is something that I used to have to do all the time, and I think it's really an important skill that you need to nourish and develop as well.
There's definitely been a change. I just got back from the Reed Smith Partner Retreat and sat at a table of attorneys that were they're all litigation partners at Reed Smith, so very experienced, talented lawyers, but they were all, just because of the table I happened to be at, were all the generation behind me, and I was marveling because they were all complaining about the associates and how the associates have a totally different attitude, and and they had a recent associates meeting where associates were allowed to ask questions, and they asked things like, if a partner emails over the weekend, am I expected to answer that before Monday morning? And I was like, are you kidding me? Do you know where you signed up? You've been working here for several months now. We're paying you a lot of money. And what was funny about that is that 25 years ago, that was me, the young partner at that time, sitting with my colleagues, complaining about this generation that I was having, or maybe the generation after even. So things change, and certainly there are generational differences. There's more insistence on work-life balance. And when I was a young associate and a older partner brought me to a meeting, I was expected to shut up and listen. I wouldn't dare say anything. Now you bring an associate to a meeting, even if they're a second or third year, they might speak up. You got to be prepared for this. Maybe talk to them in advance if you want to put any restrictions on that. So It is different. In some ways, I find it to be refreshing. It's definitely more human. I think COVID did this as well. You know, we never used to talk about the kids and the pets and things like that. Now, there they are on the Zoom call with you while people were working from home. You get to know people a little bit better. So overall, I don't think it's a bad thing. You know, it's been more humanizing, maybe a little bit more attention to work-life balance. Uh, and we do bemoan, you know, what was lost and is the work ethic gone? And as the AI can do more and more, what's that gonna say about what we do as human beings? I mean, when AI can write books better than humans and music better and do art better, does that mean that humans shouldn't do it anymore? I mean, AI's gotten better than humans at chess now, you know, 20 years ago. But humans are still playing chess, and, you know, AI can still do art and music better than 99% of humans already, you know, someday it may be 100%. But we still do that. So I just think it's a matter of adjusting to the fact that we are not necessarily the apex in terms of being able to do everything best. And we have our place and we can contribute, but we can leverage. And I think in the big point that Kurzweil makes is we are not staying static either. We're not just humans anymore. Now we are humans connected to our cell phone, which makes us much more productive because we can look up information. So we don't just have an internal brain, we have an external brain now. We hold it in our hand and we use it to do work more efficiently and better. And 10 years ago, when instead of holding it in your hand, it's in your helmet and directly connecting with your brain, and 15 years ago when you can do away with a helmet because it's implanted in your brain and you've got a super brain from that. Does that make us less human? Are we less human now that we have, you know, artificial hearts or artificial limbs? I don't think so. You know, I maybe we're superhuman. And that's sort of what Kurzweil predicts for the future is we don't lose our humanity, but we become enhanced humans. And if we're honest about it, we already are enhanced humans because that cell phone might as well be attached to our hand. You know, we are referring to it so much.
You
You know, you
mentioned
mentioned
this feeling
this
of
feeling of
being a
it's
superhuman in a way, and I definitely resonate with this idea now that you have AI and generative AI, especially that you can ask it a question and it'll give you multiple point of views and you're ready to go. I would love to know your take on any associate coming into a law firm. How can they show the best type of work? How can they produce the best type of work? Any tips that you would give them? Maybe how they should be using AI, how they should be composing themselves. What would you recommend?
Yes, well, we were still very much at the pioneering stages of this and learning how best to use AI. And I should mention that Reed Smith now has made it mandatory for every associate at the firm to be trained in the Gen AI program that we've licensed firm-wide, which happens to be Harvey. And I think as of this part of retreat, they said the statistic was that like 80% have already been trained, and the other ones we're going to pick up the next 20% in the next 2 months. So that's become mandatory. We may be the first firm to make that mandatory, but I think it's a great idea. And one of the things we're doing is we're doing it on an experimental basis, and we're asking for feedback from the associates. How are you finding it useful? What are you doing? And one of the things that I was recently on a call, the Cowan Group does these weekly sort of think tank calls, and a number of people, the last topic was AI, a number of people were talking about that. And they said, a lot of the people said, hey, I started using this thinking that it was a tool, like Westlaw's a tool or, you know, a handbook's a tool or whatever. But I found that I'm getting more out of it if instead of treating it like a tool, I treat it like a colleague or a partner in solving things. And I have conversations with it. I mean, I'm talking about ChatGPT for one thing, but really this applies to a lot of the Gen AI. So I think we're still learning how it can be most effective. We've seen some areas where I can tell you it's really good at doing summaries of large quantities of documents. It's getting pretty good at identifying relevant versus irrelevant documents. It can save you your first 3 hours in the library when you have a research project. Now, some of these deep research capabilities could probably save you a lot more time in the library, and it can help you with drafts. And I could probably tell you a dozen ways that we've used it, but I don't know that we found all the best ways yet. And I think the advantage of this younger generation of attorneys is that they grew up more with technology. They have that ability to be more creative. Maybe it's changed what we ought to be looking for in our new attorneys, not just that top 10% from the top 10 law schools that we have traditionally recruited from, but for example, the most valuable, one of the most valuable, I don't want to say the most valuable, one of the most valuable attorneys in my group has a completely different background. He got his computer science degree at Carnegie Mellon, and then he went to work for Microsoft for many years. And only then did he go back to law school. And while he may not have the litigation training of people his age, his computer training more than makes up for it. And he's one of our pioneers in using AI. And I'd love to have him on any project. So what's valuable in associates is changing. And but that background of growing up with the technology and then creatively using it really may enable these young attorneys to do things that us older attorneys are going to be slower at figuring out and adopting.
Yeah, Dave, I have this theory that, as you said, when you humanize it, when you think of it like a junior associate or a colleague, and you realize that you can ask it follow-up questions and you can really sort of give it more clear it becomes a more productive assistant in a way. But my theory sort of is, because that's the way that you most productively engage with it, you have to be good at doing that in the real world. Like, you have to be good at clarity with instruction and directness of request and ability to listen and ask follow-up questions, and really to engineer a question itself is sort of the main point of interaction with any AI tool. So my theory around this is that it really reflects back to you, your ability of how you actually are good at these things in the real world too, which is one of those softer skills that is harder to innately train.
Yeah, it's interesting. A year ago, people were talking about, oh, we need to be training everybody in prompt engineering. But as time has gone on, we've seen, no, we quite don't, because the Gen AI is learning how to do the prompt engineering for us. We just need to talk to it, okay? And so I don't know also whether you need all that to be inherent skills, because you're going to be, it's going to be training you, as you talk with it. I spent last weekend with my brother-in-law who was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and I asked him if he's using ChatGPT very much. And he said he's found a version that actually talks to him, and it's very good, because somebody with Parkinson's disease should practice talking back and forth. And to me, when I think about it, so many people are tied to computers. We've talked about the ways generations have changed. The latest generations grew up, with video games and so on. Our law firm softball team has gone to hell in the last 20 years, because when I was young, I was outside playing softball all the time. Now people were inside, playing the latest video game or what have you. Maybe they have less interaction with other individuals face to face, or even talking, because so much is chat. And you see a group of young people sitting around at a bar, and are they talking with each other? No, they're texting to the person across the table some of the time. So I think that Gen AI can help make up for that, and maybe we'll be having more conversations. I think it's faster to talk than to text, and maybe it will end up getting back to where we're increasing people's social skills and skills interacting, and Gen AI could take advantage of it, but can also help train people in that way.
This makes me think that Gen AI can place a very big importance in courtroom preparation, but also in speaking in a courtroom, understanding how to compose yourself, how your tone of voice may sound. If you have an AI that can listen, it's pretty powerful.
Well, I don't plug any particular product, but just to give you an example of how this is being used, one of my good friends in the e-discovery industry for a long time, Carl Shinneman, is part of a new company called Test My Witness, and they're actually using AI to have witnesses sort of practice for their depositions, and the AI then evaluates the person on how they did and gives tips and everything. So to help prepare witnesses for deposition testimony and trial testimony, that's just one of the new AI companies that's out there. And we're going to see more and more applications like that. And I don't doubt that, the new product's going to come out to help us lawyers where we can practice an argument and then get tips back from the AI on how to improve.
Dave, where do you see this? I mean, the logical extension of good AI use and deploying AI across, let's just keep it in the legal sector, necessarily means that junior associates or people in general, but they don't need to do all of the things that they used to do, right? I mean, something that used to take hours now takes seconds or, a morning. How does this affect the future of sort of like just the billing, the way that firms bill out? I mean, it seems like the productivity enhancement itself is so transformational, but then at the end of the day, things are going to get done much quicker. And I'm just curious how you view this disrupting the actual sort of economics of big law in general.
Yeah, it creates huge quandaries. When you first started that question, I was thinking you were getting at the issue of, do we all have to worry about being replaced, or are lawyers going to be replaced? And that's a big quandary too. We could talk about that separately. But the whole billing issue, if you look at it from let's say from the perspective of a big law firm, like my law firm, Reed Smith, on the one hand, clients expect us to be on top of the latest technology, and we are. I mean, we're investing millions of dollars. Those Harvey licenses we're buying for all of those associates, they come with a monthly cost multiplied by the hundreds of associates we have across the firm. And we've hired full-time, multiple people, AI experts to help us figure this out. Those people aren't billing time. That's just a cost to the firm. So we're having to sink a lot of money into this. And what is the impact on us? Are we going to make more profit from it? Well, the quick answer is no. It's only going to lose us money, because if we can now do in 5 hours the project that used to take us 10 hours, we've just cut our revenue in half for that project. And so then, people come back and say, well, then, just raise the rates so, you can still, make profit. But guess what? The rates are already too high for our clients, and they will not stand for our raising our rates. And so when you ask the corporate world, should law firms, raise the rate, they'll say no. They're charging too much already. So all of the traditional motivations go against adoption, because you're, number one, taking money out of your pocket to study these products, learn these products, adapt to them and adopt them. And there's a lot of non-billable time. I mean, all of those associates had to go through Harvey training before they could, start using it. And we paid for that time as well. So there's a lot of out-of-pocket loss, and the ultimate impact is we're cutting down the main way we make money, which is the billable hours, and we're cutting down on those billable hours. So that's could be scary for law firms. It has led to, more thinking about, well, let's look at alternative billing, but they've been talking about the death of the billable hour for as long as I've been practicing law, and moved to alternative fee arrangements. But it's really difficult to do that, because how do you measure the value, and are clients going to pay, if there's a premium over the hourly rate because you're using AI? So this very much under discussion right now. I don't feel bad for law firms, because the statistics show that, particularly like the ML 100, the biggest law firms, are having good years, and they still seem to do better and better each year. But I do wonder if that's sustainable with the new AI. I do think it's starting to impact on hiring decisions. We're not hiring as many associates as we did 10 years ago. I think that's true of other firms as well. And so it may be a concern for people that are in law school or thinking about going to law school now. Will we need as many lawyers? Will there be as many jobs for new associates as AI picks up more and more of the work? But that's not just true of law. That's true of so many industries. Will there be enough jobs for the future?
Well said, and definitely opens up a treasure trove of more questions. Now, Dave, we always ask this at the end of our conversation, and that is, what is your hottest take on the industry right now?
My hottest take on the industry is, despite the fact that everybody's talking about AI, and we've just spent, most of our time talking about it, I still think people are actually underestimating what the impact is going to be. And if you, for example, read a couple of those books that I mentioned, another one that I'd recommend is a book called AI 2041, it was written in 2021, predicting at where things are going to be in 2041. It's by Kai-Fu Lee and Chen Qifan, two of the big futurists. And I just think, excuse me 1 second, I was looking it up and it started playing. Read about what's happening and what's coming, and the world is going to, and there have been technological changes in the past, and those who study it, futurists, tell you that the pace, to us who are living through it, it seems like it's just constant improvement and constant change and constant technological advancement. When you take a step back and look at it, it's really accelerating change. And that's what Kurzweil's talking about when he talks about the singularity. He's talking about when, AI gets smarter than humans and progress just goes off the charts in terms of how fast it progresses. And people don't realize how fast this is coming. People will ask me, well, what's this, what's going to be happening in 10 years? And they think, okay, maybe things will be a little different. It could be a little different. You can't even predict things are going to be like in 10 years. In 5 years, they're going to be completely different. And so I think I would say buckle your seatbelts. Everything is changing. I'm retiring from Reed Smith in a couple of months, and I'm going to be starting up a legal technology venture, which is going to be focused on access to justice for ordinary individuals. Most of the big firms, and including myself, typically have represented big companies. But I think AI brings tremendous promise to reduce the cost of legal services for individuals, to make it more affordable. And that's what I want to focus on after I leave Reed Smith in a couple of months. Access to justice for people that haven't been able to afford legal services. And I think there's tremendous potential to use AI there. But I think the pace of change is the biggest thing that is going to surprise people. Everyone knows it's hot, but if anything, I think it's being underestimated.
Wow. It's a great take and very, very true. This is all developing so rapidly, and I'm excited to see where it goes in the future. Well, thank you so much to our audience for tuning into Between the Briefs, brought to you by Steno. Special thanks to our guest, Dave Cohen, for sharing his invaluable insights on the evolution of e-discovery, his extensive career in litigation, and his vision for the future of legal technology. And of course, a big thank you to my co-host, Joe Stevens, for another great conversation.
Thanks to you as well, Adrian. And be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and stay tuned for more thought-provoking discussions at the intersection of law, technology, and innovation. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Up next on Between the Briefs.
I don't know that clients are going to be willing to pay junior attorneys to do something that where an AI agent would do it in minutes. I'm in the camp that AI is going to be replacing work that's done by professionals. I think within the next 3 years, we're going to see.
Stay tuned for the full interview coming to you soon. Between the Briefs is brought to you by Steno. To find out more about Steno and how we combine exceptional court reporting and litigation support services to deliver a superior litigation experience, visit steno.com. That's STENO.com. And then make sure to search for Between the Briefs in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts, and click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Steno, thanks for listening.